Live broadcast from LaRouchePack.com. Today is the Ides of March, March 15th, 2013. My name is Matthew Ogden, and I'll be moderating tonight's proceedings. Now, as per Mr. LaRouche's request, we will be departing ever so slightly from our usual format tonight. Rather than waiting until after Mr. LaRouche's opening remarks to pose our first question, Mr. LaRouche has requested that we begin by reading a very important question that has come in from a high-level institutional contact in Washington, D.C. The questioner asks, Mr. LaRouche, General Martin Dempsey will be soon going to Russia to meet with his counterpart and attempt to put the U.S.-Russian relationship back on track. This effort is part of a broader attempt by a network of current and former defense and diplomatic officials to revive U.S.-Russian cooperation. This effort obviously intersects efforts by Russian officials to promote international cooperation on asteroid defense and coincides with the upcoming 30th anniversary of President Reagan's SDI speech, which you were deeply involved in shaping. You are very familiar with the situations both in Moscow and Washington. What advice do you have for General Dempsey and the others attempting to reestablish U.S.-Russian strategic cooperation?
Good. Well, first of all, no sane person is going to seek a war with Russia or other nations at this time. Only a dangerous lunatic would even prepare for such a war. Now, what General Dempsey has indicated, at least according to this report, and I think it's an accurate one, we recognize that the time has come. We cannot actually fight war, especially not world war, especially not nuclear war. And those who think that they've got a clever means of hitting first and decisively are really idiots. They haven't learned a lesson which many of us learned from the experience of Khrushchev in the 1950s, when Khrushchev who was actually a British asset. This is an interesting part about it. I happen to be informed on one of these kinds of things from time to time. But Khrushchev was actually working for the British and had a contact of 4 representatives from Russia, or from the Soviet Union at the time, with this connection with Bertrand Russell. So it was a Bertrand Russell operation, and it was a scheme worked out partly by the British interests at that time. I came across it back in the 1970s when I got access into these nice little secrets. But we've come to a point now that it is impossible to conduct a thermonuclear war the way that some people in Washington are talking about it, and in London. Because there are 2 ways. One way is, as you hear about in reports, that the United States has a clean weapon system of nuclear weapons which will preempt and take everything out, including the Russians. They're idiots. And as the Khrushchev, or the Khrushchev operation back then indicates, what did Khrushchev do? He was ready to set off this great demonstration, nuclear war. But it was not quite what it was intended to be. This involved the Cuba crisis. And what happened? In the end, Khrushchev took his nuclear weapon. It was actually a nuclear thermonuclear weapon. It was one of those mixed kinds of things. And he set it off in Siberia in a sort of a neutral territory. And this led a cloud over that entire area, a black cloud with all flashes of lightning and so forth, the usual things you'd expect with such things. And it set it off. Now, this continued to operate for a period of time, several days, which this black cloud over this entire region continued to spread. Now, the significance of that is not what I'm talking about really, but that indicates what the problem is. somebody who's faced, say, someone with the United States and Britain, because that's what is the Queen of England and Obama are the two people who are indicated as the provocateurs of World War. Now, when they talk about a clean preemptive strike by the United States, they forget the alternative. And this little lesson from Khrushchev's little operation in Siberia warns us. There's several things you can do. A desperate nation will not worry about having a very clean, quick bomb. They will go out to make the world as a whole as messy as possible. A prolonged thermonuclear operation running over a matter of weeks. And that kind of thing is just as bad, and worse, actually, than a clean shot. But if you threaten China, 1.4 billion people, you threaten India, over 1.1 billion people, what are you going to get if you say that you're going to do a one-shot, quick kill of Russia? It's not going to. You're going to get they have the option of making the whole world an unwholesome mess, including the United States. So this whole idea of going into a preventive war, we've heard about preventive nuclear wars beforehand, and that's more chatter of the same thing. Now, people like General Dempsey understand these things, obviously. The time we can have an actual thermonuclear war on this planet, when you consider the two alternatives, one was the so-called quick kill thing, the other one is the long kill thing. And the desperate nations will go to the long kill alternative because it's the only alternative that's left for them. So therefore, the time has come. This war business is over, or should be over. Because if it's not over in one way, it's over in another. We have to change the whole system. The time in which we can continue to conduct major warfare, so-called strategic warfare, no longer exists. And that's the motive I would attribute to General Dempsey and others who know what this whole business is about. And the freak show specialists who've got their little gimmicks can't cut it. But the time is when there's no reason for the war, none whatsoever, except some insane people like the Queen of England, people like that. And Obama, of course, who was nothing but the same kind of a wretched creature. So therefore, the urgent issue is we have to decide, are we going to save civilization? Under those conditions, I would think that a team like General Dempsey and so forth, coming into Russia would find that with Russia, there would be an easy agreement on certain alternatives to thermonuclear war. That is a real option. The problem here is that we're on a program now under this president and under the Queen. The Queen is the real evil person in this case. I mean, Obama's evil, but he's not very bright. The Queen is sly and a killer. And she's an empress. Therefore, the time has come to kill this whole idea of having this war. We've got to change the policy immediately to enhance the security of the human species. And if we don't do something like that now, if we let this whole economic crisis proceed as it is proceeding now, realize that the United States is on the verge of a breakdown crisis, an economic breakdown crisis. All of Europe is in the process of a current breakdown crisis. Look at what happened in Greece. Look at Spain. Look at Portugal. Look what's happening in Italy now, and so forth and so on. Also, look at this joke show which is going on in the area in near Asia. You have what they're piling in with one of our own members of leaders in the administration. And they're extending the operation against Syria. What they're doing, they're idiots. Absolute idiots. Because that kind of logic applies to that situation. And if you get into this kind of situation, you'll find that nobody's going to win a war. They're all going to lose a war, commonly. And the time has come when war, or general warfare, as such, is no longer possible to sane people and sane nations. The time for that has ended. If anybody pushes for an action which goes in the direction of warfare, they should be, you know what? They should be just taken out of office, put out in some prison someplace where they can no longer commit major crimes. But this thing that proposed by this group is absolutely necessary. And the people involved in this group's meetings are the right people. But what we have to do is we have to bring all of these leading nations, which includes China, 1.4 billion people. That's not a joke, buddy. India, at least 1.1 billion people. That's not a joke either. And the time has come, we've got to rebuild the world, not destroy it. The time has come to end what's called the oligarchical system. And there's no other alternative. And anyone who wants to start a war is a criminal. And probably also insane. We know what the Queen's attitude is. Well, she is a criminal, as far as I'm concerned. What she's done already. This woman, and this is important to understand this, this woman has run a campaign whose purpose is to reduce the human population from 7 billion people to the order of 1 at a rapid rate. She is the one who's proposed the extermination of 6 billion of 7 billion people on this planet. She is the one who controls this ape we have called Obama. He's an idiot, essentially, in the end. She is the serious and represents the serious forces of evil. And evil is if you propose to reduce the human population from 7 billion people to approximately 1 at your best shot. What are you? Hitler's a piker compared to you. And the time has come, therefore, we've got to end this business of warfare. We may have police actions that have to be taken where threats are made, but the only reason for that kind of combat is to eliminate threats to general peace. And that can be done. And General Dempsey typifies the kind of people from our own country and from other countries who understand this problem. We can no longer have general warfare. Well, the systems we have don't allow it. The condition of the human species is such, we can't allow it. And that action has to be taken now. And anybody in the United States government who doesn't agree should be thrown out of office now, while we still have it in the United States to save.